Thank you very much to be back with us. We will start with a first demonstration of design strategies and material wheel by Laetitia Faust from UAL, University of Arts in London. Thank you very much, Laetitia.
Thank you for having me and for giving me this space to present this work with you. So I think, brilliant. Right, so yeah, my name is Laetitia Faust and I am a textile design researcher at the University of the Arts London. And I work with a fantastic team of researchers there who are all also involved in the HereWare project and contributed to the tools that you're going to be seeing presented here today. So I'd like to give special thanks to Professor Rebecca Early, Professor Kate Goldsworthy, and Dr. Rosie Hornbuckle, who've also led on a lot of these tasks and developed the ideas behind them. So what I'm going to be talking about today is how we can develop design strategies for bio-based, circular and local textiles. So if some of you were here this morning, you will have heard a lot of discussion about how we have these distributed manufacturing systems, these distributed ways of bringing innovative or waste materials together to create products that fit within a sustainable and circular economy. So in the HereWare project, we really dug deep into that challenge of developing design strategy and supporting designers in this emerging and quite challenging space. So the three design tools, oh, that's not very readable, is it? Well, okay, well, we'll have to make do. The three design tools that I'm going to be talking about are the material lifecycle map, a diagram of which you can see on the slide. The Bio10, which are a set of design prompt cards, and I'll talk in a lot more detail about what they are. And the garment scenarios, which are also a tool that supports designers in developing new product ideas and using bio-based materials. I'll get back to that at the end of the presentation, but all of these tools are available for free to download from the HereWare Hub, which I think we'll also be hearing in a lot more detail about the HereWare Hub in Alexandra's presentation at the end of this seminar series. So if you can stick around for that to get a sense of everything that's on the hub and how to get involved with it. But effectively, it's accessible through TCBL, and you can go on there and you can download these tools for free. They come with little guides that will help you to understand how to use them in your own professional practice. So kicking off with the material lifecycle map, the first of the three tools that we're talking about today. I'm really sorry that this has somehow gotten completely unreadable. I'll have to explain everything to you then. But effectively, this is a lifecycle visualization tool. So it is an analog tool as it stands. You can download it as a PDF and print it out, and you can work with it in teams, whether if it's in your material sourcing process or in the design process or as a review of existing products. So what it does is that it charts all the life cycles of a material and product. So it goes through feedstock preparation, filament production, yarn production, textile construction, fabric treatment, garment design, garment production, use, which is interestingly a blank space. That's really pointing at where we're at in sustainable fashion at the moment. It's we don't really know what happens in use. And then going into life cycle extension, where we've got reuse, repair, and remanufacture. Again, into use, obviously, you've extended the life of your garment, so it's going back into service, and end of life. What was really important for us was that circular visualization where you're connecting end of life and basically giving quite a lot of detail around the different processes that a material product gets regenerated into new textiles at end of life. Whether that's through biodegradation, through dissolution to go back into wet spinning, through mechanical recycling. And then we're also charting like incineration as a like worst case scenario, but technically you can recover energy from that process. And inside each of these segments of this life cycle map, we're really trying to detail as much as possible the different processes that happen. So this is really about material literacy and about really like getting to a point where you can chart a material or a product. And even if you don't know every single process that it's gone through, at least you know you don't know. And you can start asking the right questions in your supply chain, and you can start like really trying to like engage your own material literacy with this product that you've got in front of you. And this material life cycle map was like really for us a tool to understand bio-based materials. When we started investigating this field of bio-based materials, it's a very broad term. It can mean a lot of different things. The official definition for a bio-based material is something that has at least 50% of its of its weight from like non-fossil derived materials. So effectively a 50-50 polyester cotton piece of clothing could be counted as bio-based inside this definition. That's obviously not good for us. We were looking at innovative, sustainable and circular bio-based materials. So we collected a series of samples to really try and like charter that space, and then started like classifying them and trying to understand what different processes they went through, like what types of uses they were for, and like gradually got us to that point with the material life cycle map and being able to sort of chart the whole of the life cycle for any material really, but that gives us a point of comparison with different, oh, it's got timing on it, brilliant. So just to show you a little bit how this could be used, this is, so the picture of the garment that you see there is a prototype using Vienna Textile Lab bacterial dye on Tencel. So the super innovative thing is like these Vienna Textile Lab dyes, which as the name it like sort of represents, they're made from bacteria in Vienna in like a super exciting sort of like off-land process where basically you can have like dyes that work inside a city, inside a like a chemical vat effectively. And then on Tencel, and we probably all know Tencel as a regenerated cellulose material. So looking at that garment, we want to start questioning like where does it come from? And against this this material life cycle map, we're identifying that the main material comes from forestry. Tencel is made from eucalyptus tree mainly, and then goes through a transformation process to give us fiber. So by going through this process of like looking at the map and like looking at your example, it could be something that you're developing, or it could be something that you want to question, like that's made by someone else. You get to sort of like almost work through by a process of elimination. Like, you know, this is not made from textile waste. You know, it's not made from fossil resources. Like the other ones that you can read are agricultural byproducts. That could be something that you might want to start bringing into the fold around like how you want to maybe think about the evolution of this material. And then I'm not going to go all the way around the life cycle, but just skipping the next stage and going down to filament production, trying to understand what are the steps between your raw material. So, okay, it comes from eucalyptus trees, great, but like a eucalyptus tree isn't a textile. So how does it work its way through? And literally trying to like put semi-technical words, like we've done some generalizations and like, you know, given some broader umbrella terms to some of the processes. But this specific garment goes through a wet spinning process where the cellulose, which has been extracted from the eucalyptus tree, gets spun out into a continuous filament of Tencel. So like really trying to visualize all those processes rather than like having that blindness over all the like different steps of a material. And finally, even I'm going to struggle to read that one. Oh yes, staple fiber spinning. That's the one that's going to be that's highlighted there. If you go download this, if you go download the resources, then you can actually read what's everything that's on the material lifecycle map. So this was not done on purpose, but maybe it's like a little teaser to force you to go and like actually look at the resources. So that's the kind of stuff that you can start like observing, like like in a tactile way, like when you can see the textiles, you can see that it's made from like, it's got the little fluffy look, so it's got a staple fiber. It's not a filament fabric, like a filament yarn gone into a fabric directly. So you really like start identifying those. And we've got like a series of prompts around this where it's like asking different questions. So for each process, once you've kind of identified what it is, like, can you question like where this process was done? Can you question maybe what types of energy were used for this specific process? Like, is this process the best possible version of itself that it could be? And can you actually get that information? And can you work with your suppliers to really understand the full life cycle of your product? And then it allows comparison. It means that you can start looking at different materials and understanding that they might be like great for different things, but that they are completely different, and that once you've like selected a resource, it's going to take different processes to become a textile, and like it's not on a sort of easy scale of like good to bad, but it really gives you that starting point to be able to ask the right questions. So that's where we left off the tool in the project, and like I said, you can download it. But all of these like methods are really just starting points for ways of working, so that we can understand sustainable and circular design a bit better. So the video I'm going to be showing you now is just walking our way through a couple of examples on this garment lifecycle map, which was developed as a commission for the Design Museum in London for the Tomorrow's Wardrobe exhibition. And basically they wanted something that was going to be really public facing and that would get anyone who's like, it's a free exhibition at the Design Museum, so it could be literally anyone and their grandmother walking through this and trying to get them to understand a little bit better what garment circularity means and like what this approach to material literacy can look like. So it's a website, so you can actually go and visit it like yourself and go and like work your way through. And what it does is that it's got this sort of, well, at the moment there's a limited selection of garments on there. You can go click, I want to discover everything about this cotton t-shirt. And you kind of click through this, and it's got some like very baseline instruction, like indications around like what these materials are made from and like what the different processes mean. So it's to give that sort of level of literacy to better understand our garments, and it takes you all the way through the life cycle. You can actually read that a bit better. And what's really exciting with the digital version is that we can then like connect different life cycles to each other. So that t-shirt went into chemical dissolution for recycling, and now it's become part of this pair of jeans, which it turns out are actually mixed with something else, I think, and can like maybe not be recycled at end of life. So it's really trying to like get that that sense of full life cycles for materials and products into the hands of the people who need it. In this case, we were looking at a very public-facing setting, but this is effectively, a blank canvas to apply any type of information. We're exploring ways in which this could be connected to life cycle assessment data, or how it could be used to support designers in material sourcing approaches. If this is something you're interested about, it's like a sort of an emerging idea, and I'd be really happy to discuss it further. So you can see the sort of interactive piece in the Design Museum in London, and you've got a QR code, which I'm kind of standing in front of. Not ideally, but hopefully you can catch that, so that you can go directly onto the platform. Otherwise, the URL is garmentlifecyclemap.com. So the second resource that I'm going to talk us through is the Bio 10. So like I said, these are a set of cards that are there to support designers to really like prompt their creativity in the space of a circular and sustainable and bio-based and local space. To develop these cards, we didn't just like pull them out of thin air. Professor Rebecca Early in particular had done a lot of work on developing guidelines for like fashion and textile designers in this space. The TEDS 10 are some of her work also that she'd previously developed, and these Bio 10 are obviously sort of like inherit quite a lot of the thinking from the TEDS 10, but we also drew inspiration from a lot of other resources that exist out there. Like every single company now has a set of circular design guidelines, and we really did a review of like what was there and how could we like build on what was already existing. But what we wanted to ask was like, what changes if you've got these circular design guidelines, if you're looking at the ASOS or the Nike circular design guidelines as a way to guide your design process, like those design guidelines tend to be material agnostic and actually pretty much focused to like polyester and cotton as like the main representatives of our fiber mix. But we know that regenerated cellulose and garments made from like man-made cellulosics, for example, don't react in quite the same way as like more conventional fibers like your cotton and your polyester. So we really wanted to bring in those unique properties like that water absorbency, for example, that you get in MMCFs, and think about how like that would affect the whole system and how like the system needed to be different when we were looking at local and circular resources. So there are 10 cards, and they kind of like come together under 4 themes. So we wanted to start with the system. So the designers that we're talking to aren't necessarily just product designers, and I hope some of you recognize themselves in this like extended design decision maker or design stakeholder perspective. So that might be like a buyer, it might be someone in sourcing, and we really wanted to support a shift in paradigm in the way that we work in the fashion industry in that way. So we've got like a set of recommendations around like designing for collaboration. How can you like really like prompt yourself to work differently across sectors or internally in your team? Looking more broadly, designing with systems and understanding like the recycling systems, the material production systems. And design for communication, because that is a really important part of design, of circular design and designing for sustainability. So in design for communications, there's like references or recommendations around labeling, for instance, around marketing, and how that's going to impact your circularity strategy. The technical scope, we've only got 1 card, but that's because it's a very important card. It's design for recycling, and that really is like one of the like key principles around this around circular design. It's understanding what happens at the end of life, and then making sure that every single decision that you're making in the design process enables that recovery of fibers at end of life. And this might be after 50 years, after 100 years, and you've like repaired the garments 1,000,000 times. But it still needs to be recovered. So in design for recycling, we've got recommendations, for instance, around monomateriality, around design for recycling, around designing for sorting and making sure that things can actually be recovered. And then in the production scope, this is where it gets like quite practical. So for instance, on number 5, design to minimize impacts, we've got things around like sourcing, just making sure you've got like the best possible criteria for the type of material that you use, thinking about energy use, for instance. Design to minimize waste. It was really useful for us to like go through these like one at a time and actually identify some differences where there might currently be some misunderstandings. So for instance, designing to minimize waste includes both designing with waste, so using the waste of other industries, so like, you know, making patchwork out of offcuts to make a new garment, but also designing so that you're maybe not making waste in the future, so things like zero waste pattern cutting or full garment knitting or weaving. And then designing for longevity is really about like that technical aspect of making sure that your garment like will like keep in the system as for as long as possible. And then finally, in our temporal scope is like maybe the sort of like bigger picture, slightly more speculative approach that really like brings both like time and longevity, but also the social and like community element of fashion together. So design for transformation, thinking about how you might extend life cycles by like changing a detail, having like a cuff that comes off, but like really thinking about that in respect to circularity and longevity as well. Designing for sharing, like trying to understand how leasing platforms and like sort of online peer-to-peer like resale might be something that could become part of the design process. And finally, design for upcycling, like how you can like bring minimal intervention onto existing clothing to feed it back into a product loop. So again, those cards are completely available to download, and one of the ways that we've used them is to sort of like inspire people in lecture formats where we're showing like really pioneering examples of like fashion and textiles that are like going beyond like the sort of baseline of sustainability, and being able to like describe them with words that can then be taken on in like new strategic development inside your own brand. So it's one thing to see, you know, for example, the Vienna Textile Lab and be really excited about that idea, but being able to understand like what strategies are used and how those strategies can then translate to your own business is the step that we're offering with those resources. So you can see the three examples here are like using algae as a local colorant, the Vienna Textile Lab I've talked about, or Unspun as also like a local manufacturing 3D woven garment. And then finally, we've got the garment scenarios, which are potentially like the most like practical and like, you know, step by step, follow it, and like, you know, just write it right into the boxes kind of tool that we've got in there. And it's really based on the same thinking as the two previous ones. It's got a full life cycle approach, so it really guides you to think about your product from the material extraction and like describe like what these materials are, where you've sourced them, like what precautions you've taken in doing so, and then going through like your textile production, dyeing and finishing, product design, manufacturing, thinking about the business model and the system you're putting your materials in, use, life cycle extension, use again, and then end of life. And we've used this product lifecycle map many times throughout the 4 years of the project, where we got designers in different settings, students like in different localities, to use this tool to really like push themselves in terms of their design. So you can see very like basic sketches here of designs that were developed in like a few minutes or half an hour or so, that were really thinking about like their local system. So Kangoo Rain, for example, was really thinking about like Dutch like bike hangers. So like all the places where people like come in with their bicycle, and like using that as a community hub to offer repair services, to offer like re-dyeing processes, etc. Bleu de Prusse is an example thinking about workwear in the context of like French manufacturing. And then the full circle dress was actually done by like a very international team. So I think it's like a more international like garment, but it was like really looking at like material recyclability, like with like biodegradable sequins and like that kind of approach. So really like using the full life cycle to think about every stage of the design process and thinking about its circularity. So yeah, so we put these tools in practice. Like I said, we took them around like through multiple workshops and actually iterated them quite a lot throughout this process. Like they were developed like just not in one day, and you can see like a previous version of the tool there where like a designer was like trying to understand what this garment that they had with them was made of, and like really testing their assumptions. They were used to develop all these different concepts. And like really got us a lot of feedback about like what different designers needed, and that we then put that feedback into action into the tools. So yes, like I said, you can go and explore the HereWare Hub, and like that's how you sign up. So it's all for free. You just need to put your details in, respond to a few questions so that like we know like who the community is made up of, and you will be able to access all these different resources. There's not just the tools that I've presented today, and yeah, Alexandra will be talking a lot more about that. But again, misplaced QR code, which is down there, but that will take you straight to the TCBL Hub. And that's it for me. Thank you very much.